Wong Tou, a character from the hit game Yakuza Like a Dragon 8 Infinite Wealth, which I've genuinely seen some people call it that, and it's also what you say when the big toe gets roast beef, because then it's the wrong toe. Wong Tou is a seemingly not all too important character in the game, as he doesn't spend all too much time being involved, and they also explain very little about his backstory. Some may assume that what little of it they explain in game was all there was to it, but you know what happens when you assume. You see, scattered throughout the game are various bits and pieces of lore for this underrated character, and I've gone ahead and gathered all of the information presented to the player about the character Wong Tou. Some of these things are revealed in his character profile when defeating certain street bosses, particularly that are found around the Nirvana Hotel, but also in various flavor texts from NPCs who clearly know the man. To anyone who just played the game, Wong Tou is the commander of the He has a son, he runs a big hotel with a super secret gambling hall, he can apparently kick a lot of ass, and he is Chinese. But that doesn't tell his whole story. Let me take you back to the year 1968, when a young couple in China have their firstborn son. They love their son with all of their hearts, but their dreams of being a happy family were never meant to be. The father of this child was heavily involved in the underworld of China, and in quite the contrast, the mother was the exact opposite, being heavily involved in her Buddhist faith. As we know all too well from the events of this very series, the father's criminal relations caught up to him, and to this day it's unknown whether the man died, or simply went into hiding, or runs a bar in another country or something. Regardless, the mother was tasked with one thing, being the safety of their child. Knowing that her connection to the father may prove fatal, she handed her beloved son to a monk, one which she trusted with every fiber of her being. She stepped away from the temple and began her new life, separate from her son. Simultaneously, her son was given a new name by the people of the temple to distance him from his parents. The son was named Wong Tou. Many years passed and the baby had become a growing child. He lived out his days as a normal kid would, participating in the same faith as the monk who had somewhat become his father. On rare occasions throughout the years, the temple would be visited by a woman. Not much was ever known about the woman, but she always wished to visit Wong. She was always very kind to him, and in the relatively short periods of time she got to see him, he felt a very deep connection with her. As the years went on and Wong began to show more signs of maturity, he also began to show more signs of doubt in his upbringing, questioning his true roots. He was led to believe that his parents had passed away and that the monk was his grandfather, but on one faithful day he finally learned the truth. The woman that always seemed to be so fond of him was his mother, and the reason she visited was because she, understandably, couldn't bear the thought of not being a part of his life. Despite her intentions being a simple case of motherly love, this interaction with her son unfortunately would be the linking factor that led to her death later down the line. But this discovery of the woman's identity led to many disagreements, arguments, and fights. Why was he never told us? Why couldn't he see her? What else are they hiding from him? These questions led to even more doubt within him, pushing him further and further away from his faith, wondering what other lies he's been fed his whole life. Eventually, he turned towards a life of degeneracy, becoming involved with less than desirable crowds. More years pass and Wong has abandoned his faith and the people who raised him. He's grateful to them for what they did, but feels a deep hatred for the lies they fed him throughout his life. After some time, he desires to get away from it all and heads to Hawaii, where he begins to build the Ganja Gunjo Jianjiao. From then on, a lot of what happened is stuff we already know, although there are still some things not explained in all too much depth. He obviously created the Nirvana Hotel and rose that to the high-end level that it's at today. He was the true culprit of the assassination of JFK. He allowed for many Chinese immigrants to make Hawaii their home. He was given an offer by the overseer to basically work for them, which he turned down. We know as well he's not necessarily fond of Palikana, emphasized by his distrust of religion and faith caused by his rocky history with it all. We know of the death of his mother, which he was torn about, and we also know the power this overseer must have had to identify who his mother was, despite Wong barely knowing himself. Her death also made Wong think about how, despite him being lied to, he really did love his mother in the end. And this was why his boss theme, which I didn't look up how to pronounce this, is called Giftiger Füllhalter, which is kind of probably how you pronounce it. When translated from obviously German to English, means to avenge my mother. Perhaps the woman's voice throughout the song could even be a reference to her. But then some interesting expanded lore for Wong Tou comes from the 3 separate dubs of the game, of course being Japanese, English, and Chinese. Wong Tou's English voice actor is Rich Ting, which there's nothing really important about him, but I just thought he had a pretty cool name, because he's like a rich thing, so When Wong meets with Kiryu and Ichiban, the three of them engage in the coolest intro of the whole game, because this shit is sick. Look, Kiryu and Ichiban standing there back to back, that's so cool. But anyway, during the battle, in Japanese, Wong will say your usual expected lines for a boss, you know, the kind of stuff like kakate koyu, that sort of stuff. In English, he more or less says the exact same thing, but in Chinese, he says a very common Chinese phrase, which I'm sure for any viewers who have a good knowledge of Chinese would know, being arigato goza imasu, which when translated into English of course means open to me the contents of your heart, so that I may see who you truly are. But then the final bit of subtle storytelling is that after the fight, one of Wong Tou's men begins to mutter something to himself before screaming some sort of chant and throwing himself out the window. Keen-eyed players may notice that the man died in an incredibly familiar position. But the most important thing to consider was that, yeah, I made all of that up. I mean, really, Wong Tou's involvement in the story is just, hello, I'm Chinese.